Welcome to the Top 5 Communication Myths webinar. I want to thank you all for joining me and prioritizing your personal growth. But before we dive in, as you're joining, please write where you're joining from and what you're hoping to take away today. I am Sandy Weiner, as most of you know. I am a certified dating and relationship coach with over 16 years of coaching experience. I have been specializing in boundaries and communication skills throughout the time that I've coached. And as most of you know, I also host 2 podcasts. I've written 2 books. And every day I witness the transformative power of effective communication in relationships, not only in the people that I work with, but in myself. I see the difference that it makes when you have these skills. In today's webinar, I am going to focus on the top 5 communication myths that could be sabotaging your relationships. And these myths might surprise you. They are not so obvious. The good news is, with the right tools and the right strategies, you can turn these myths into opportunities for growth and deeper connection. I'm going to be sharing some tools with you today. I also am going to share a special offer at the very end, so please stay on. Most people agree that poor communication is one of the biggest challenges in relationships. And if you've ever been in a relationship that stopped working, you probably know that trying to talk things out doesn't always work. It can actually make things worse, especially if you don't have the right skills, like knowing how to process your feelings and needs before you speak up, knowing how to understand your triggers and how to listen well, knowing when not to talk. A lot of times we are not supposed to say anything at all, and how to fight fair. That's one of the biggest ones. I was married for a long time to a man who I tried to talk things out so many times, and it really did not work because we both weren't on the same page. And I didn't have a lot of the skills that I have today. And actually, I'll share a really quick story that at the end of my marriage, my husband really wanted to stay in the marriage. And all of a sudden, he started working on all the skills that I had told him were an issue in our marriage, like the fact that he would walk away during conflict and he never wanted to talk anything out. And so he started to get help, which was pretty amazing. And he learned nonviolent communication. This is a form of communication skills that I then learned, and we began talking in a way that we never could before. And just really briefly, nonviolent communication is a method that has you first understand what's going on inside you, all the judgments that we have. So let's say somebody did something to you and you say, oh, what a jerk. That person always does this. That person never does that. And then you start calling them names. And before you speak, I mean, this is all going on in your head. So you're full of judgment. And so the first step in the process is to notice all of these judgments so that we can get to neutral and not be in that judgy state, because it's all made up stuff in our head. And then we identify what happened. So let's say when he would walk away from me. So I would say, when you walk away from me, I feel, and we identify our feelings. And then we talk about, why do we feel this way? Because we had a need that wasn't met. And I'm telling you all this really quickly because doing this and breaking it down was really helpful, because we were no longer talking at each other. We were talking to each other and hearing each other. And so that's just one of the skills that I learned. I went deeper into communication skills after my divorce and started to really learn from some of the top communication experts. Because in order to co-create healthy relationships that are compassionate and respectful, we need to learn and practice effective communication skills. But how much do we really understand about how to communicate effectively? Most of us are lacking in these skills, but it's not our fault. We probably didn't witness healthy communication skills in our families, and we were not taught it in school. I mean, I don't know how many of you were taught, like, here's your healthy communications class, right? So I asked, when you registered, what were your biggest communication challenges. So let's talk about some of the things many of you answered. Linda said, speaking my feelings in the face of anger, disrespect, and intimidation, being able to stay in a peaceful place or know an exit strategy. So if any of these resonate for you, just type yes in the chat because, I think a lot of these are relatable. Karen and Denise said, asserting myself, voicing my truth. Stop thinking about what someone thinks of me and just express it. That's a big one. I think what most of us do is we think about what others think of us and what they're going to learn, what are they going to react to instead of what do we need and what's our bottom line. I was talking to my daughter last night. She's in a new relationship and she kept talking about him and what his needs were and how she didn't want to get in the way of what he needed. And I said, what do you need? It's not just about him, it's also about you. And that's such a natural thing to do. Like, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt his feelings. I'm afraid he's going to reject me, whatever that is. Leslie said, naming my emotions and overcoming the fear of getting shut down if I bring up a problem. Nancy, Maria, Lisa, Linda, Darrell, Kirby, Irma, and Carmen said some version of this, expressing my needs and hurt feelings in a non-confrontational way, setting boundaries without feeling guilty, finding my voice, being misunderstood, and not saying what I really need. And Joy, Pat, and Rose said some version of dealing effectively with confrontation. So many of us are communicating in ways that are not getting us the results we want or need. So thank you all for sharing. I support all of these issues in my upcoming course on communication skills that begins next week. And I'll speak a little more on that later. But for now, are you ready to hear the 5 most common myths that people believe about communication? Myth number 1, good communication is always calm, never emotional. Many people believe that when emotions escalate, it's a problem. They think it's the main reason why their conversations around conflict are not successful. So they try to suppress those feelings in order to have calm, productive conversations. But that's not the best thing to do. In fact, it's not realistic to try to suppress those feelings, and it's not realistic to expect that 2 people can have deep conversations about emotionally loaded issues without triggering each other's emotions. Even though it's easier to hear somebody's point of view when they're not yelling at us, it's not healthy to push down or suppress our feelings because they always come back if we don't process them. Instead, the goal is to build each partner's emotional resilience so they can handle their own and each other's emotions while they talk about difficult topics. And I'm going to share a quick tip about how to do that in just a minute. Although it takes time and effort, emotional regulation and emotional resilience are skills you can learn. I teach them in my upcoming communication course. And no matter what your history is around conflict and relationships, it is never too late to learn and practice these skills. So I'm going to share a quick super tip that I recently shared with a client who was in a new relationship with a man who was pretty anxious, and she wanted to kind of slow his pace down. And so I talked to her about emotional regulation. If you're in a relationship and you've both come together after a day of work or you haven't seen each other in a little while, it's good to co-regulate your breathing. And what that looks like is taking a moment to connect before talking by looking into each other's eyes and breathing together until your breath is in sync. And this does wonders for building connection and intimacy. It slows you down and it helps you to get in sync with your partner, which is an amazing thing to do. Let me know if you've ever done this or if you believe that this would be helpful to you in a relationship. Ready for myth number 2. Good communication always leads to good feelings. If we are speaking up, we should feel good after expressing ourselves, right? Not necessarily. For example, you may have initiated a confronting conversation with your mom around a boundary violation. And this is something that happens to me, so I'm going to share it. Let's say she brings up an issue she's been having about your brother, and you're not comfortable hearing her speak about this issue with you because it's not about you. It's about the two of them. And it's actually a boundary violation known as a drama triangle or triangulation. So you tell your mom, I hear how upset you are with my brother, but I'm not comfortable hearing about this. Please speak to him directly if you want to resolve this issue. But she gets defensive and she lashes out at you for setting that boundary because she doesn't like to be told that she's doing something wrong. Most of us want what we want, right? I mean, that's a natural thing, but we don't always have to give in to what the other person wants, especially if it's against our integrity. And although you may not feel good after a conversation like that, you still know that the communication was good for the relationship because you were honest and you made your boundary clear and you did it with kindness and with empathy. I started with hearing her. I started with saying, I understand that this is a hard thing for you. Over time, if you maintain your boundary, she may begin to respect you more. And that's actually what happened with my relationship with both my parents. Can anybody relate to that situation? Let me know. Ariana said, if you've been eavesdropping into my conversations with my mom, very funny. I think it's a common thing with moms, right? They want to suck you into that conversation about your brother, your sister, or friends do it all the time. Like, oh, let's talk about this person. And just saying, I'm not comfortable with that. And that's something that I believe you should be talking directly to that person about, but I'm not comfortable hearing it. And I remember having to repeat these conversations many times with my parents until they began to really respect my wish to stop that conversation. The value of your communication should not be judged on the basis of how you feel immediately after every difficult conversation. Good communication leads to a progressively clearer, deeper understanding of yourself, of the partner, and of the problems between you. And I'm talking about partners, but this refers to anybody, to friendships, to work situations, to romantic relationships, to family. We don't necessarily have to feel good after these conversations. So that was myth number 2. Here's myth number 3. Good communication should lead to an agreement. Okay, so if we don't need to feel good after every difficult conversation, do we always need to reach an agreement? No, absolutely not. Unless we're talking about a real deal breaker, like a safety issue or a crucial boundary violation, many issues don't require two people to agree. Although this is a very common misunderstanding among people, communicating has nothing to do with agreeing or disagreeing. It has to do with understanding and respecting each person's opinion, especially if you disagree. Communication is not the same as problem solving, but the bonus is that most effective conversations are going to eventually lead to solving problems because you've reached a deeper understanding of the issues. With some complex issues like political or religious or other hot topics, you may need many conversations to deepen your understanding before you can actually get to any meaningful or productive problem solving. But once you're there, you may need to explore some agreements, but even then, agreeing to disagree could be an option, especially with those hot topics. Good communication is more likely to happen when you slow down, you take time to talk and listen well without focusing too often, too much, or too early on whether or not you agree. Curiosity and good listening are the key. Number 4, good communication can solve all of our problems. Many couples believe that if they communicated better, all their problems would be solved, but that's not true. Every couple, or any close relationship for that matter, will have some problems that are not solvable. Most of you know who John Gottman is. He's a couples therapist and author, and he's known for his breakthrough research with thousands of couples. He and his wife and his team have coined the term perpetual problem to explain the difference between problems that are solvable and problems that are not. And here's what he said. Perpetual problems are problems that center on either fundamental differences in your personalities or fundamental differences in your lifestyle needs. All couples have perpetual problems. They are the problems that a couple will return to over and over again. Gottman also says that what is a perpetual problem for one couple may be perfectly solvable to another and vice versa. So if you've been in a relationship or you're in a relationship, do you relate to this unsolvable perpetual problem? It doesn't mean the relationship doesn't work. It just means that there are going to be things that you will not agree on. It doesn't mean you shouldn't talk about these issues. What matters is the emotional tone. Tone is really important. We have a whole unit on tone in my course because knowing how to modulate your tone is so important when you're communicating, and the intention of our conversations. If you've ever worked with me, you know that I always like to start every conversation with intention. My intention is to get closer to you. My intention is to have this conversation so we can reach an understanding. This is a really important way to begin a difficult conversation. So rather than trying to solve your perpetual problems, try and see these conversations as an ongoing dialogue that can help you both actively develop acceptance and resilience. We're coming to myth number 5. Good communication is all about listening to each other. Another common belief around communication is that the only skill people need to learn to communicate better is to listen better. So people learn how to do many of the listening skills like active listening, reflective listening, all kinds of listening. And it's helpful, but still things don't completely improve. Some experts emphasize the importance of talking things out. They might encourage you to use I statements to address the behavior and not the person, to choose the right time and place for the conversation, or choose the right tone and attitude, which we've just talked about, especially when you're raising a complaint or something you're upset about or a request for someone to change. These are all good strategies. So you start working on your talking skills, but still your communication hasn't improved much. And you wonder, what's going on? What's wrong? Well, you're doing most things right, but there's one skill that's missing, and that is emotional regulation. Good communication requires 3 skills, 3 key skills: effective listening, effective talking, and above all, effective management of our emotions. You can learn all the theory in the world about communication. You can get really good at it, only to see it all go out the window the moment you get triggered by somebody in a difficult conversation. Has this ever happened to you? Although it's common and understandable and almost predictable, it is so important to learn how to handle your triggers and manage your emotions before you can have productive and effective conversations. That's why I teach an entire unit in my upcoming course on managing triggers. And I'm going to share a quick exercise from that unit on how to come back to center when you're feeling triggered. And I'm going to invite you all to do it together with me. It's called Feel Your Feet. When you are feeling off center, your thoughts are swirling around in your head and you want to get out of your head and into your body. So if you'd like to close your eyes, you can, but I want you to make sure your feet are placed firmly on the ground. I'm actually barefoot with my feet firmly on the ground. And bring your awareness to the bottom of your feet. This helps draw the excess energy down into your body. Now take a deep breath and try to breathe into your feet if you can, and pay attention to any sensations in your feet. So when you do this by yourself, you'll do this, take a few deep breaths, and if you've closed your eyes, feel free to open them now. And it's amazing how quickly this practice works. Usually within 30 seconds, you will calm yourself down because you're actually literally grounding yourself. So here's all the myths. Number 1, good communication is always calm, never emotional. Number 2, Good communication always leads to good feelings. Not true. Number 3, good communication should lead to an agreement. We don't always have to agree. And number 4, good communication can solve all of our problems. I don't think so. And the 5th one is good communication is all about listening to each other. And listening is just one of the crucial skills. So which one of these can you relate to the most? I want to talk to you about the importance of letting go of these 5 myths. Once you identify which of these false beliefs you are carrying, you can get to work on healing and improving your communication skills. So, how do you feel now, knowing that what you might have thought about communication is actually not true? And do you think this knowledge may affect the way that you communicate? And as you probably know, what I covered today is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to increasing our emotional intelligence. There are so many other essential communication skills, and here's a couple of them. Knowing how to process our emotions and triggers so we can stay grounded and calm when we're in tough situations, and we can really stay in our rational brain. Knowing how to communicate our thoughts, feelings, and needs clearly and confidently, feeling heard and understood. Knowing how to deal with difficult people without shutting down or losing our power, engaging in active listening to create more intimate connections, and knowing how to fight fair and repair after arguments. This is probably the most important skill. These are all skills that are important to learn to have the best relationships. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready are you to learn these skills and become a much more empowered and skilled communicator? Most of you are going to leave today with some new ideas. You've got a few tools that I shared with you. You have some new insights, and all of that is great. But I know for sure, because I've been doing this for 16 years, that it's hard to continue the momentum and to really take these skills into your life, because it's hard to do it on our own, and it's hard to do it without some training. So if we keep doing things the way we've always done them, we'll be in the same place in 6 months and in 12 months. How will it feel when you're still struggling to find your voice, to know the right words, to deal with conflict well, and to communicate with everybody in your life with grace and ease? How will that feel? Let me know. If you would like to feel that way, that you just have all these things at your fingertips. It took me so long to gain these skills. This is over 2 decades in the making. When my ex and I started doing this was 3 years before our relationship ended, which was about 2 decades ago. It's just gotten better because I've learned more. That's where my course comes in. And this is the second time I'm teaching it. It's been 2 years since I've taught it. Some of you have already joined, which I'm really grateful for. We are starting on May 1st, but registration ends on April 28th at midnight. So if you could work with me to help you communicate better, resolve conflict with ease, have peace of mind in every relationship you have, what if you could do it at a fraction of the price of what I charge for private coaching? Now, I have to tell you that what I charge hasn't gone up in years, because I want to keep my prices as reasonable as possible. But I do know coaches who charge $1,000 an hour and more to work with people. I also know coaches who never work one-on-one with clients. They only work in groups. Clients who work with me privately pay up to $1,500 a month to learn these skills. And this course is $797. It's less than the price of a month of coaching. It's a 6-week course, and the courses are small. You will get coached by me live for 6 weeks in this course. Unfortunately, the bonus that I had up was $100 off early bird. It ended a few days ago. We had other bonuses. The first 5 people had a chance of getting a private session with me valued at $300. But those bonuses are gone. But I just decided today that I'm going to open up 5 more bonus sessions, those $300 sessions, with the next 5 people who join the class. Here's what you're going to get if you join: 6 workbooks, 6 video training modules. You'll get weekly live sessions, homework assignments to further the learning. All of the recordings are downloadable. You get a private group forum that has already started. You get powerful scripts, which are so helpful, and valuable frameworks for processing your emotions. As I said, registration ends April 28th at midnight Eastern, and join today. I just want to teach more people these skills. They are just so important, and I have found very few people teach them well. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I have broken it down in a way that makes sense and is lasting and has helped so many people. Relationships make or break on communication. Thank you for joining me today. And if you're listening to the replay, thank you for joining the replay. And I hope you join the course because I would love to teach more people these really critical skills.